Veterans are extremely good at clear and accurate communication. This is something they struggle with in the civilian world because civilians are not usually very precise in their speech. As a species, human beings are remarkably bad at talking to each other using words, which is funny because that's one of the main ways we communicate. However, if you look it up, over 70% of our communication is nonverbal. So we use a lot of things in like context, tone, and body language to try to figure out what someone's really saying. Well, in the military, a lot of your communication is not going to be while you're looking at another human being. You're actually going to be engaged in a task while you're trying to communicate. So you need to be able to speak very precisely and very clearly. And it's something that they're just incredible at, but it's so awkward. Sorry, I can't stop laughing. It's so awkward in the civilian world because we really aren't that clear. So I'm going to give you an example of how this impacts me as a brat in just my day-to-day life. And then I'm going to tell you a military example of why they learned that communication is so important. So in the civilian world, when I was in a workplace, someone gave me the instruction to take the cans on a line of the cans on a shelf and to move them up. So I said, okay, I'll do that. Well, they left, and so I did exactly what they told me to do. I moved them up. I picked them up and I moved them up a shelf. When they came back, they said, what are you doing? Why'd you do that? And I'm like, I'm just doing what you told me to do. They wanted me to pull the cans forward. That's a very simple miscommunication, and it wasted a lot of my time, and then I did the job incorrectly. Now, in the military, if that happens, it can have very dire consequences. So here's an example of a scenario where that can go very wrong. If you are on the radio and you're in a combat scenario and artillery has recently fired off a round, if you hear someone say something on the radio and you don't understand what they said and you say the word repeat, you are instructing the artillery to repeat their last fire mission, and they're going to fire off another round, which could be very bad depending on the circumstances. So lives are at stake, expensive ammo is at stake, and yeah, it's a big deal. I thought of another example using a real life veteran. Okay, so my grandfather was in the Air Force for 6 years, so he went through the process of learning how to speak very clearly in the military. So many times over the years, my grandmother would say something to him like, get me a couple tomatoes, or get me a few potatoes. And then my grandfather would bring her back exactly what she asked for, which was like 2 tomatoes or 3 potatoes. My grandmother would almost always get angry at him. Sorry. Because she expected him to know, like, based on what she was making for how many people, like, she'd be cooking for a family, our family of 5, right? And then, so she would definitely need more than 2 tomatoes. However, my grandfather's not an idiot. He was just taught to listen exactly to what is told to him. Because if you think about it, using, a little bit more critical thinking, she could already have a certain number of tomatoes and she might not need any more than that. Maybe she's substituting it with tomato sauce. So he's just listening to his commander's orders and then he's getting roasted for it. That poor man. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more info on why it is so important to be clear in your communication with veterans. Anyone, really, but they're who I care about most.